So is this the deal that will avoid a fall election? Late Friday, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh secured a big deal from the government on paid sick leave for workers, but the details are still vague. Currently, people with COVID will be able to get $500 for 2 weeks if they're sick. Will this be expanded? This is a big victory for the NDP, who have already forced the Liberals to give Canadians who are losing the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit this week, as they're moved on to EI, more money. They're still going to get $500 a week instead of just $400 the Liberals first proposed. So will the NDP now support the speech from the throne, and do they have more demands to make? Let's find out. Joining us from the foyer of the House of Commons is the NDP leader Jagmeet Singh. Mr. Singh, two big deals, and let's start with paid sick leave. You made a late Friday deal with the Liberals on this. What exactly did you work out on paid sick leave?
Well, to put it bluntly, first off, this is the first of its kind in the history of our country to have a federal paid sick leave for Canadian workers. It's historic. It's a massive win for workers, a massive win for Canadians. And to put it in a straightforward, simple way, the Liberal proposal was going to cover thousands of workers. We ensured that it would cover millions of workers. And those details will be released on Monday when the bill is tabled. But what we've been able to achieve is historic. And for New Democrats, this is the first step forward towards ultimately creating a paid sick leave that is permanent for all Canadian workers for now and forever. That's our hope, and we're really excited about what we were able to achieve for Canadians.
Okay, because the Liberal, I just want people to understand this. The Liberals over a month ago had said, look, we're going to do paid sick leave for those with COVID. It was going to be temporary. It was going to be $500 a week, and you had to only have, the threshold was you have to have missed 50% of the work week. You're saying this could apply to more than just COVID, to millions of Canadians?
Well, first off, the commitment in May was something that we secured in support for a crucial vote that the Liberals needed. So it was something that we had fought to establish months ago. The Liberals committed to us that they would do it, and they hadn't delivered it yet. So that's why we were fighting, and we were very firm on this, that they had committed it already, they hadn't delivered it. This is something that we were really proud of fighting for Canadian workers, and that's why we were very firm about it. Now what we've been able to do is expand the way that it can be accessed. Before, it was more limited, and we broadened it so that more Canadians can make use of it. Really what our goal is, if you are sick in this pandemic, we don't want any worker to make this impossible choice. Do I go into work sick, or do I stay at home and then not know how I'm going to make my bills because I don't have any income coming in? We don't want anyone to go through that. And what we've been able to achieve will give millions of Canadians, millions more than before, that confidence that they can actually rely on this program.
Look, when you're saying millions, that I clearly have to understand that means it's more than just COVID. So that's a big deal. How much will this cost?
Well, we will look at this as an investment into fighting the second wave. Think about the risk that would happen if a worker gets sick and says, you know what, I'm not sure I can afford to stay home, I've got to go into work, and what that would mean in a second wave and the risk of exposing colleagues. We don't want workers to have to do that. And it's unfair to make a worker have to choose impossibly between those two things. This is an investment to fight COVID-19.
So you're saying second wave and COVID.
But I want to be clear on something.
Yeah.
We're already seeing the numbers increase, and we're in a second wave. But what I want to do is this. What I want to be very clear is, what should happen in terms of who pays for this, it should not be everyday families and workers and small businesses that have suffered that pay for this. It should be those who have profited. And Evan, we know there's been massive profits made by some of the richest, wealthiest companies and Canadians. They should be the ones that pay for this pandemic, that pay for this recovery.
But
they profited off it, and that's what we'll focus on.
And I'll get to this wealth tax in a minute, but real quick, you're saying this is the second wave. I'm just trying to get a detail on this. Is this therefore a temporary paid sick leave deal that you've made with the Liberals, or is part of this deal, it's not just about the second wave, this is a permanent paid sick leave?
No, what's before Canadians right now, what the legislation that we've secured is going to be temporary, and it's something that we want to fight to make permanent. We believe it should be permanent. We believe that all Canadians should have this now and forever, and we look at this as a first step. This is a first step in establishing the first of its kind, a federal paid sick leave. This is the first time we've established it, and now we're hoping to expand it in the future to build something that is permanent. But this is a big step forward. Okay,
so now you've secured a deal on paid sick leave. You secured a deal to make sure people who are off the CERB don't lose any money. There's going to be a vote on that this week. I know you're going to vote for those things. Now Now the big question is, will this mean you will vote for the speech from the throne, supporting the Liberals and therefore avoiding a fall election?
Evan, if we see this legislation as we've negotiated and agreed upon on Monday, we will vote and pass that legislation. And yes, we'll also vote and support the throne speech. The reason being, I still have my concerns that Liberals say one thing and do another. I'm still concerned about their empty words, but we've been able to secure something very meaningful, a big win for Canadians. And if this is reflected on Monday, yes, we will be able to support the throne speech.
Okay, now let's just quickly go, because you don't seem to have a number on how much this is all going to cost. I appreciate you just made the deal, but you talk about a wealth tax, and I know you're talking about some kind of marginal tax rate for the super rich, but is that going to be contingent on your support? Because remember, the Liberals already raised the taxes on the top 1% when they were first elected. You clearly want more. Is that going to be something that you need to see a bigger wealth tax in order to support the speech from the throne, or is that a fight down the road?
It's something that we're going to keep on fighting for. It's something that's very important for us. We know that it should not be working class families. It shouldn't be everyday folks that pay for this recovery. It should be the wealthiest, those who have made massive wealth and massive record profits during this pandemic, off the pandemic. We know there's offshore tax haven concerns. Companies make profit in Canada, but don't pay taxes in Canada. That's wrong. We know that there's companies like Amazon and Netflix that have made record profits during the pandemic that virtually pay no tax in Canada. All these things need to change. If you make profit in our country, you need to pay taxes in our country.
Two things. There's a political side and there's a consequential financial side. On the political side, the Liberals are going to tack left. They've done this before. They eat the lunch of the NDP. And people will forget that you may have pushed them if there's another election in the spring, and the Liberals will say, see, we did that, and they eat your lunch politically. On the other side, the Conservatives are saying, how do we afford all this? You're pitching programs you don't even know the cost of. Doesn't that worry you?
Well, what worries me is if we're in a pandemic and we've seen the impact of a pandemic, it would be cruel to have families that were barely getting by on $2,000 a month to see them have to be forced to get by on $400 less. That would be wrong. On top of that, we know that this is an investment to fight COVID-19. If a worker gets sick and can't decide to stay at home because they just simply can't afford to, what risk does that put our society in?
All right, Mr. Singh, I got to leave it there. I really appreciate it. Obviously, two big deals, and it looks like, if it's what they say, you will support the speech from the throne and there will not be a federal election. Mr. Singh, I appreciate you joining us today. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
All right, coming up.